Okay, looking forward to diving into the audience questions segment on this week's Friday show. First one, David, can you give examples of white identity politics? Okay, so I'm going to answer this one without any. The question is so succinct that this person's question could be completely innocent. It could be a trolling question. It could be a rhetorical question. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I'll just take it as an opportunity to sort of give some context and give some examples. The question needs context. When we talk about identity politics, what we're talking about is the idea of, I guess we could call them alliance platforms or political alliances or platforms built on identity groups, often religious groups, racial groups, social background, religion, sexual orientation. You could have it, you could have a military status identity group, whatever. 90% of so-called identity alliances are basically the realization that people's identity is important and it can bring unique perspectives which should be listened to when thinking about politics. The other 10% is where it goes off the rails, and I've been critical of it when it goes off the rails, is where it starts to become exclusive of people who are not part of the identity group. It becomes destructive, it becomes divisive and toxic, and I'm against it, and I have no hesitation to tell you that there is a fraction of identity topics in politics which become divisive and toxic. Typically, identity politics is based around non-agent identities. So, for example, if I say to you gender, historically, men are the agent identity and the sort of agenda setters. And when people talk about gender, we imagine, oh, this is a conversation about women. In race in the United States, the agent identity race is white. And when we say we need to have a conversation about race in the United States, people's minds go to minority groups. We think about black people, we think about brown people. Sexual orientation. The agent identity is heterosexual, cisgender individuals. When we say, let's talk about sexual orientation, most of us understand it's a conversation related to gay, lesbian, bi, etc. So when we say white identity politics, we're talking about identity politics around an agent identity, at least in the United States. Exhibit A of that would be the alt-right, which is effectively a white identity movement. And people will say, well, but here's a black guy who's alt-right. Okay, it doesn't matter. As a general overview, the alt-right is a white identity movement. Exhibit B, which has a lot of overlap with the alt-right, is white ethnonationalism type movements. People like Richard Spencer, for example, wacky Fox News guests who say white men are now oppressed in the United States. Trump's campaign contained a ton of white identity politics, and you can see it in that his positions that he would espouse implied, or sometimes even said, that he was going to protect middle-class white people from brown immigrants coming over the border to take their jobs, maybe to rape their women, maybe to kill their kids, their children. Brown immigrants from the Middle East committing acts of terror, so on and so forth. So it was a sort of de facto white identity politics. And white identity politics, in a sense, is sort of, it's apocryphal in a proverbial sense because white identity is not under attack. White people are not oppressed. There's no power structure or structure of discrimination, which would lead us to say it's totally logical that white people as an identity group would be organizing to lobby for politicians that will improve their circumstances because they are the agent identity group that has historically defined the terms and controlled the situations, the institutions of power, better said. That being said, the hypocrisy we point out is that many of the people who slam identity politics as a general umbrella term participate in it themselves, but only with certain identities, white being one of those. I'm ready for the comments. I know some people will not be pleased with my analysis, but that's the way I see it, and that's what the viewer asked.